listening to Give God 90, where we're not afraid of the tough biblical questions, because we will dig through the language, the culture, and the history to find the truth revealed in the words of our Creator.
I wanna see the light.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for sharing part of your day with us. My name is Jerry Mitchell. Supervising me today, as usual, is Myra.
Good morning, everyone.
I did get a question the other day about why do I say that? And the reason is, quite honestly, it's an inside joke in the family. Sometimes when she had to go to work, I would say, "You left me unsupervised. That's why I got hurt." And that's happened on more than one occasion. But usually it was my own carelessness. But yeah, she does a pretty good job of attempting to keep me on track.
Attempting being the key word.
Over the weekend, we had a celebration here. We were celebrating Yom Teruah, and I attempted to make it clear that it wasn't on the day, but at the same time, we got together as a group to celebrate. And I think that is, well, a lot of people say, well, that's not right. I think we need to realize that we can celebrate the Almighty all the time. And I hope that that would be sufficient answer. We encourage everyone, of course, to celebrate at the time of the occurrence, but sometimes with today's schedules, that just doesn't work. So we were together this weekend, had a wonderful, wonderful time. Thank everybody who showed up. We had a lot to eat, and it was really good. So
It was good fellowship.
It was. You might want to turn that on. You see, in the fall of the year, we have a series of feasts, and it begins with Yom Teruah, followed 10 days later by Yom Kippur, followed 5 days later by Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. And there's something that a lot of people, even, this is going to sound funny, but even a lot of the rabbis miss the meaning of, and that is why 2 goats are used for Yom Kippur. And that's kind of what I want to concentrate on today, mostly because we need to look at this and understand it from the viewpoint of which Moses was writing. After the Babylonian exile, a lot of things were lost. Some things were changed because the priests who came back had been, I hate to use the word out of practice, because not all of the ones who were practicing were coming back or had the ability to come back. Some died, of course. And as they were attempting to teach these younger people, some things were lost. Now, if you remember a few episodes ago, we looked at how the goat represents sin and evil, but the goat itself actually can't be sin or evil, even though you can get a bad goat every once in a while. But they represent these things, and that's what we're going to look at. So Myra's actually going to read a passage that tells us about this from Leviticus. Go ahead.
Aaron must take from the people of Israel 2 male goats for a sin offering, and he must take 1 male sheep for a burnt offering. Then he will offer the bull from the sin offering. This sin offering is for himself. Then he will perform the acts to remove sin from him and his family, so he will belong to the Lord. Next, Aaron will take the 2 goats. He will bring them to the Lord at the entrance of the meeting tent. Aaron will throw lots for the 2 goats. 1 lot will be for the Lord. The other lot will be for the goat that removes sin. Then Aaron will take the goat that was chosen for the Lord by throwing the lot. He must offer the goat as a sin offering. The other goat was chosen by lot to remove the sin. It must be brought alive before the Lord. The priests will use it to perform the acts to remove Israel's sin, so they will belong to the Lord. Then this goat will be sent out into the desert. Leviticus 16, verse 5 through 10.
Of course, that comes from the International Children's Version. And I'm often asked which translation of the Bible is the best. Quite honestly, there isn't one. And depending on what your purpose is, if you're studying, because of the amount of reference material and the amount of work that's been done with King James to study, it's a good one to study from. If you're reading to get a general idea of what's happening, the International Children's Bible actually is quite good. You don't get the in-depth amount of information you might be looking for, but if you're just trying to get a good overview of what's happening, that is a very good version to just read. And of course, there's more to what she read, but I want to concentrate on the goats. Why two? One as an offering, one to be set free. Let's start with the offering. And remember that this is a shadow picture, a shadow of good things to come, as the writer of Hebrews 10:1 says, for the law having a shadow of good things to come and not the very image of these things can never, with those sacrifices which they offer year after year by continually, make the comers thereunto perfect. So what we're getting here is this imagery. It's kind of like not even looking in a mirror, but you're looking at something so you will recognize it when you see the real thing. But what is this in the fall of the year a picture of? Now, here's where a lot of Christians are going to be upset with me, and that's okay. Just stick with it. You'll see why. See, most Christians have been taught that Jesus did away with the sacrifices because he was the perfect sacrifice. There's a problem when we're looking about, the goats, though. The spring of the year is the Passover lamb. And the Christians simply don't understand what the significance of the goat is in the fall of the year. They don't know how to answer the question of why a goat is necessary for a sin offering in the fall. Right? The lamb in the spring represents innocence. It's originally the Passover sacrifice so the death angel would pass over the homes who had blood on the door. Right? After the golden calf incident, as I call it, we now see there must be an offering made that represents sin because the guilty must pay. Our Creator demands payment for payment. We see it over and over again in Scripture, right? Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, life for a life, payment for payment. The redemption of the firstborn is extended to everyone who is willing to follow the Creator's instructions, and the example of the blood on the door of is the blood on the door of the homes. That's the example. However, the guilty, the lawless, and the sinful must pay for their violation of the covenant. Even the people who choose to join themselves with the children of Abraham and become adopted by the Creator as his own. Does that make sense? Okay. I wanted to make sure I said that right. That, as a representation, falls to the goat. It represents the evil that brings sin into our world. So Aaron would first make the usual sin offering for himself to make certain that he had completely repented of any offenses that he made, either knowingly or even unknowingly. Then he's ready to perform the ceremony to cover the sins of the people. A ram for the burnt offering and a goat for the sin offering. He would at one point place his hands on the head of the goat that was going to be set free and confess the sins of the people. Now, to do this individually, it would take a long, long time. But remember, this is for the sins of the community as a whole. And even though the list was long, he would speak the sins of the people over the goat. Then he would hand the goat to a fit man who would take the goat from camp, representing removing sin from the camp. You no longer had it among you, but it was still out in the world. This was to be done year after year without embellishment, without adding anything to it, not adding any rituals to it. But what is this a shadow picture of? Let's see what it shows us here. Go ahead and read the next part.
Do not become easily upset in your thinking or afraid if you hear that the day of the Lord is already come. Someone may have said this in a prophecy or in a message, or you may read it in a letter that someone tells the Lord. Or you may read it in a letter that someone tells you came from us. Do not let any person fool you in any way. That day of the Lord will not come until the turning away from God happens. And that day will not come until the man of evil appears. He belongs to hell. He is against any so-called God or anything that people worship. And the man of evil puts himself above anything called God or anything that people worship. And that man of evil even goes into God's temple and sits there. And then he says he is God. 2 Thessalonians 2:3-4.
Now, some people want to call this person the Antichrist, but look what happens to him. If you skip down to verse 8, it reads, "And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord who the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming." Where's Paul getting this? He's writing to the Thessalonians. Where does Paul draw this from? Remember, and I've said this often, Paul can't change anything. He doesn't have the authority to change anything. So he has to be getting this from some place. If you look at Daniel 8:25, "Through his craft and by his hand he will cause deceit to prosper, and in his own mind he will make himself great. In the time of peace he will destroy many, and he will even stand against the Prince of Princes, yet he will be broken off, but not by human hands." When the man of complete hopelessness and lawlessness sits in the very seat of the tabernacle of David, not the third temple, he makes the claim to be God. The Creator himself will speak, and that man will be destroyed. That is the goat of the sin offering. The other goat that was taken out of the camp, still alive, sin still in the world all around us. How do we know? Revelation 20:10. "The devil who had deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, into which the beast and the false prophet had already been thrown. There they will be tormented day and night forever and ever." How do we know this is true? Where's the other witness? Daniel 7:11. "I kept watching because of the arrogant words of the horn was speaking. As I continued to watch, the beast was slain, and its body was destroyed and thrown into a blazing fire." The goat that was taken out of the camp was supposed to be released. It wasn't chased off over a cliff. That came later. Because the goat that's released represents sin in the world. It remains. The goat that was sacrificed represents the man of perdition, hopelessness, lawlessness. But eventually, the evil one will be thrown into the pit of fire. Now, hopefully somebody's standing up shouting hallelujah here, right? Well, I would hope you would. Some people might even be saying, well, I'm ready right now. But no, you're not. Excuse me. What you should be getting ready for is to be counted among the people who will be covered. All right? If you are part of that, if you're part of that, as a community, what we've done as a whole, not as individuals, that is what is covered on Yom Kippur, as a community, not as an individual. When we read these lessons, hopefully this year you're going to have a little better understanding. You see, we think of, we confuse, I should say, the terminology. We confuse redemption. The blood of the lamb in the spring of the year, that is what protects us from death. That's different. That's very different than what the blood of the goat does in the fall of the year when its offering is done. That covers up or atones for the sins of the people as a whole, because we haven't been the example that we should be. We've all gone our own separate ways. We've all done our own thing. We've all gone a way that we shouldn't go. We're no longer in agreement with the Creator. And I think I said this on the podcast before. The Hebrew word echad means one. Now there's only two, I can say numbers. There's only two numbers when we think about numbers that cannot be plural. It's 0 because it has no value, and 1. Every other number can be plural, or is plural actually, because there's more than one. So if you are one, you're out there all by yourself. You're going your own way. You're not doing anything. But the cool thing about it is the word yachad. By adding one Hebrew letter to echad, one, we get yachad, unity. That first letter of the Creator's name in the Tetragrammaton, the Yud He Vav He, that Yud, when you add that Yud to echad, you get unity. You cannot have unity unless you are first in complete agreement with your Creator. That's how you get unity among people. Isn't that a cool concept? That's how Hebrew works. That's the activity in the numbers, in this context anyway, of how that works. No other language has the ability to do that I'm aware of. I know there's some things, I think, in German that sort of mirror that, but I believe German is also a verb-based language. So when we see these things and we start looking at them and we start bringing these verses together, when Gabriel was speaking to Daniel, he talks about these things, but he doesn't give Daniel the clear picture. When Yeshua is telling John to write these things down, and John's seeing all these images, they all come to him, and he's trying to write these things down and make sense of what he's seeing. But sometimes, if you've ever tried to write a narrative based on a picture, it's tough to do. I had that class in high school. It was called creative writing class. It's hard to do that. But the good thing is we have enough forensic evidence to draw from that we can look at the difference between what the blood of the lamb in the spring of the year does and what the blood of the goat in the fall of the year does. And of course, I've just given you the very short version of a much larger teaching I actually did for Messianic Delaware, I think last year. And if you want more detail on that, you can look at the Zoom video on MessianicDelaware.com. It's all laid out there for you, and the slide presentation that I used is also there as well. There's a lot of scripture references in that if you want to check that out. It's absolutely free for you to learn from. And really, if you do that and you have the ability to go there, check out some of the other teachings there as well. There's a lot there. The teaching you want to look for when you go to their teaching page is Blood versus Blood, to learn more about that. It's quite interesting when you actually start putting things together in the Bible and understanding what they mean. And is it any wonder then that in our modern world, the people of Jewish faith look at Christians and say, you've got it all wrong. And the Christians are looking at them and say, well, you're missing a big part. Well, the reason they're both missing a big part is because some of these shadow pictures have been corrupted over the years. But from the Christian standpoint, there's been a whole lot of corruption take place there. Not only the evolution of language, but the false teachings as well. Because a lot of people this year who follow the modern Jewish calendar will be looking at Yom Kippur on Wednesday night, and some other folks are going to be looking at it on Thursday to begin. I'm not going to have a podcast on Thursday, simply because I know these folks won't be listening. They're going to be doing their Yom Kippur things, whether it is fasting, whatever it may be. And I encourage you to join with them as they do these things. Search these things out. Look at Leviticus 23. Look at Leviticus 23. Look at Leviticus 16. Read through them. Study them. Figure them out. There's a lot going on. These are shadow pictures. Forget about our modern traditions. Forget about our doctrines. The Bible is agonizingly specific if we are willing to take the time to read it. Are you ready? I asked that question the other day. Are you ready for this year? In that 2 Thessalonians passage, it says there will be a great falling away. And that includes believers. Because they get bored. People today get bored. They've been waiting. Something's got to happen. They look at the world around them and they see all this stuff going on and they say, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I put my faith and trust in the wrong place. No, you didn't. You just don't understand from the proper context what you should have been taught. By the way, there's another book out now that might help with that. Here's the advertisement. I'll warn you. Inheriting Lies takes a lot of these things and puts them in context. If you've got the questions, if you're just starting out, Tradition to Truth. If you're just beginning, Tradition to Truth is what you want to start with. If you want to know more, God's Universe, God's Rules. But if you're ready to actually dig and find out, Inheriting Lies comes from Jeremiah 16:19. That's where we go. That's what we do. we dig, we study. We look at the language, we look at the culture, and we look at the history to figure out why these things, not necessarily when or where, but why these things have become corrupted. And we know that they've become corrupted because we can see it. We have the evidence today. So until Monday, I'm giving you Thursday night off. So until Monday, did you have anything you wanted to add to all that?
No, just thank you for joining us today, and be prayerful during the holidays coming, and we'll see you next Monday.
Absolutely. Until then, many, many blessings, everyone.
Thank you.